now we can delve a bit more into your humble roots. What made you decide to become a banker? Because I know you're also from Cebu.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
from Cebu, so
yes,
we have Cebuano roots.
yes.
So yeah, and it makes me proud also to see a Cebuano become a CEO of a
Oh,
national
thank
bank.
you.
So that's also a great testament to the resilience of Cebuanos. So yeah, maybe walk us through your
Yeah.
personal journey in your career.
I I never decided to become a banker, right? In fact, I think the joke I shared with the team is no one wakes up one day and say I want to be a banker, right? In fact, I wanted to be a lot when I was growing up, but banking and being a banker was not one of them, right? So I was born in Mindanao, right? And but we moved to Cebu when I was like 7 or 8 years old. Uh, we live in a place in Solueta, I don't know, near Parian.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think I've heard that.
yes,
Familiar
it's the
street.
really old part of town. We actually live on top of a bodega, right? So I think Benedicto buildings. So they have Copra bodegas at the ground floor, and we would be on the third and fourth floor, right? It's in a place where the cats are afraid of the rats because the rats are large, right? Because they are like fortified by
Yeah, yeah,
copra,
I've
I
seen
guess, right?
those really huge
That's right,
rats.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was where I started. But anyway, I think most of my formative years, I went and studied high school in Don Bosco, right? So at some points, I actually thought of going to the seminary. My dad was wise. He said, it's an old boys' school. Why don't you go and figure out first, and you go and study and maybe mingle with the girls, right? And so I went and chose to go to a medical school. So I went to Veles, right? So I did my undergrad, and the reason was because I think the nursing school was beside it, so there was a lot of girls. Like my decision criteria was very very simple. Um,
Yeah.
so I actually wanted to become a doctor, right? And so I took up medical technology. I did finish that, and then I actually went to medical school for a year, but it was very difficult because my dad suffered a stroke when he was 45, and so we were really hard up, right? I started working. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts in Puente. I don't know if you remember that old
Yeah.
place. Uh, and then did a little bit of odd jobs here and there. But I went to school and finished. Luckily, I had some scholarships on the side. But it was helpful. But, at some point, it became very, very challenging to continue to do and proceed to medical school and, follow that career. It was a very long duration.
So
And
that stopped you because of the
correct.
years it would
Correct.
take.
The years it would take, and I had two other younger sisters, and everyone had to hopefully have to go to school also. You cannot hug up everything, right? And I was the eldest, so I thought so I actually took a sabbatical, and then I ended up working. So a friend of mine was starting a school. I don't know if you've heard of CITE in Cebu. So I was one of the earlier teachers there. I taught chemistry, but I also was doing their purchasing and so on, so helping out and so on. So yeah, first job, and then went to night school. Continued. I studied in San Jose. I wanted to do something and continue working, so I did evening classes with them. So I took up my masters with them, and then somehow I worked for a project called Pito. I don't know if you remember them, but anyway, one day Citibank was putting up an ad, and they were looking for people who wanna apply for a job in Cebu, right? So I thought I'd just apply, right? And
For Citibank. What
for Citibank,
designation was that?
okay. So
What title?
I applied for a management associate, right? So Citibank was very well known for their management associate program. And typically, it was a program that they hire from MBA schools, AIM, quite a lot, UP, MBAs, but mostly they take people from foreign graduates. But my year was a bit unique. I think Citibank at that time wanted to find someone from Cebu who was willing to be posted to Cebu, right? I think many of the earlier people who were from Manila who went through the MA program uh, were not very inclined to be posted to Cebu. I think the view at that point in time was that they would be forgotten. It was a small branch, and it was the only branch outside of Manila, but the action was really all Manila, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the case. So they thought maybe we'd change the formula, hire locally, send them to Manila for training, but the agreement is you come back and back in the branch. And so I applied for that. They initially offered me another job. They offered me to become a salesperson immediately, which would have paid, I think, 3,000 pesos more, which was big at the time. So I was earning like
This was
uh,
90s,
90s, early 90s, right? I was earning very little, right? And so I was like, oh, Citibank, they would give me a bump up. I'll go and apply. And then they offered me this really enticing job to do marketing, and it would pay even more. But I thought, I don't know anything about banking. I had a huge concern that I actually did not have any back. I went to medical school. I went to a technical high school. So, nothing to do with business at all, right? And so I said, why don't you consider me for the MA program? And luckily they did. Uh, I had 7 or 8 interviews. I found out later on it would normally take 3 or 4, but because they were not sure of me, they had more people to come interview more.
more
Uh,
assessment done.
Yes, more assessment, but I think it was also around more blame to share, just in case this guy doesn't make it, or he really fails miserably. But to be fair, I am so grateful for the people who took a chance, right? I think they took a chance. They were very, very supportive. And because they were also worried, they took me in earlier before the actual program started. And
You
so one
passed
guy,
all 8
sorry?
interviews. Did you pass all
Yes,
the 8?
that's right. And they sent someone from Manila. Actually, it was a shout out to Edwin Bautista, who's the CEO now of Union Bank. He came all the way. He was, I think, Tonet Ichon was the head of BDO One Network Bank, was my immediate boss. Uh, and so between Edwin, Tonet, and Flor, who was our head then, they sent Edwin to come over to vet me, right? And basically, they decided, okay, this guy, go, right? Uh, I later on when I was on their side, I thought that was a very difficult decision to take. That would have been it would be so much easier to hire from the top schools in Manila, right? And or top school in Cebu. Because honestly, I didn't go to a top school even in the city, right? So it was quite an interesting uh, experience. But they were very helpful. They held my hand. They took me in 3 months before the actual training. They drilled me on accounting, what the bank does, and so on. So I had a bit of a leg up in the sense and understanding. And then I went to Manila and joined the MA program for 1993.
But prior to that, you had no banking experience, but
Nothing.
you had an inclination towards finance, accounting. What was your course? It was just purely medical?
So no, undergrad was purely medical. So it's medical technology, right?
Yeah, but
So it's mostly laboratory science. So a lot of chemistry and a lot of biology. But I did take a management course in San Jose, and that was helpful to an extent. But I was lost with accounting at the time. I didn't have a good grasp of a lot of things.
so you had to learn the ropes quickly
Yes,
during this
correct,
period of
correct.
time.
Correct.
And did you catch on quick?
Yes. Luckily, one thing I learned in medical school is how to study hard very quick, right? And so so that brute force and just getting on with it was very helpful. But as I said, the managers and the supervisors I had in Cebu were also very helpful. The couple of guys there, Tommy, Tito, were very, very helpful. They sat me down every afternoon and they said, okay, fine, well, why don't you? So they took me in 3 months before, trained me, and then basically said, let's prepare you to go to the actual training program. And so that was very helpful, right?
How long was this training program?
A bit longer for me. I ended up almost a year because I think the program was around 8 to 10 months. We rotated in all the parts of the bank. There was written, revalidas. There was also practical courses. But we went to the different operating units. It was really preparing one to be a general manager of sorts. In my case, I was being prepared to do operations, right? And so when I finished the general program together with my cohort, I ended up doing additional programs in technology. I did telecommunications because we were far. So I need to understand what's going on. I spent some time in financial control because I need to be able to understand what the branch books look like relative to the main
But
office and so on.
during this time, what was your goal? What did
Oh,
you want to
I just wanted to
achieve?
make some money. That's all I wanted, right? At that time, I was just uh, trying to like get out of poverty, right? And so it was just to
Make ends meet.
make ends meet. Exactly. My family was getting a bit more difficult at that time because again, my dad's not been working. My mom was starting to pawn things, sell things, and so on.
And you were
Uh,
looking out for your siblings
Yes,
since you're the eldest.
yes, the eldest. That's
And
correct.
how many siblings do you have?
Two siblings. Yeah, I'm very focused on education. So my two sisters finished. The next generation, I think almost all of their children are also finished. We also take the opportunity to like chip in for everyone, make sure that everyone finishes school. I mean, I think education at the end of the day is a great equalizer and opportunities as well. No, yeah. So yeah, I mean,
So the education was, you would say, instrumental in leading to your success, eventual success.
I would say so. I never stopped studying. So I actually went back to business school in around 2000. So I went to Chicago. So I went to Booth School of Business. So it was called GSB at the time, Graduate School of Business. So when the University of Chicago opened up a campus in Singapore, I applied. So I took that and I studied in Singapore. I spent some time in Barcelona, but also in Chicago itself. No, and that was very helpful. That kind of gave me some underpinning. And then subsequently, around 2015, I went to Harvard. So I went and did my advanced
That's quite
management
recent,
program.
2015.
Correct. It's fairly recent. I think one should go back to school maybe every 10 to 15 years just to refresh, to think about how things are. I think the frameworks change. I think the cohort have changed. But I've also benefited a lot because you've changed because you're older, right? The first time I went, I didn't understand much. I went to Chicago. That gave me a lot of the foundational technical skills. They were very quantitative. They were very focused on econometrics. They were very focused on accounting. They were focused on strategy. And that was very, very helpful. Harvard was a bit different. Again, I was much older. I was a CFO already at the time. I was with a private equity group, and the mindset was a bit different. But I think one should always go back to school. Yeah, I actually went back to
Refresh.
school during the pandemic also. Yeah.
Online courses.
No, we started in 2018 and we finished in 2022. I went to a theological college, so we studied theology with my wife.
Theology.
Yes,